Okay, it's recording. Bezrat Hashem.
It's not showing it,
Thank
Ahavia. Is
you.
that normal? It's not showing it on my computer. Like usually you have like a little recording thing next to yours.
You see, I know, you see on top is like a little thing that says live on YouTube.
I see
Oh,
it.
it says live on the left hand corner. It says live. That one.
Right. Yeah.
You're sure, right? I don't have to record, right?
Yeah.
Okay,
No,
perfect. I'm going to put
it's
myself on mute.
recording.
I apologize to everybody for the technical. I apologize. Okay, thank you.
Okay, good morning, everyone. So we are continuing with our preparation for Kabbalah Satorah through Pirkei Avos. Hope last week was a very mindful week and every day counted. So this week we're going to do the Mishnah al Shlosha Dvarim Ha'olam Omeid. The world stands on three things: Al HaTorah, Al HaVodah, and Al Gmilus Chasadim. But before I go into each category to make us understand what that means for us, I really wanted to pose a question out there and to give you a piece of knowledge, because knowledge is always good. Knowledge comes from the word da'as. Da'as is over here. Da'as also means to connect. So the question that came, was really like blinking at me, and it caused me to do a lot of research, was the number 3. We see it in Pirkei Avos, right? Last week, Heve Misunim Badin, 3 things. We see it over here. The world stands on 3 pillars. And 3 is an essential number in everything that we stand for, right? The 3 Avos, the Shalosh Regalim, the 3 mitzvos at the Seder, the 3 steps we take back in Shemon Esrei, the 3 steps that we go forward in Shemon when we're finished Shemon Esrei, Moshe, Aaron, and Miriam, Kohen, Levi, and Yisroel, the 3 presents that Moshe, Miriam, and Aaron left us, which was the Man, the Be'er, and the Anan, the 3 partners of create in the creation of man, which is Hashem, man and woman, the Nefesh, the Ruach, the Neshama, the 3 characteristics of Bnei Israel, which the Gemara brings down. Bnei Israel are Rachmanim, they're Baishanim, they're Gomlei Chasadim. In English, it means they are bashful, they are sympathetic, and they are Gomlei Chasadim. The 3 things that are Mavir, Roa, Gzera, right? Shuva, Tfilah, Tzedakah, the 3 components that can change our decrees, and much more. And especially something that's was very blatant was when you plant a tree, the fruits of the first 3 years, you're not allowed to touch. They're off limit. It's Orla. So we want to understand what is with the 3. Now we are going to eventually connect it. If I remember, 3 is Gimel, right? In Gematria, 3 is Gimel. Now Gimel, really, you can also say means Gamal. You can cognate it to Gamal. It means to nourish, to ripe. So the number 3 may have that essence of nourishment, of ripening. It also means to wean. According to Kabbalah, the Gimel resembles a leader draining water from the roof of a house, which channels the accumulated water through its protruding spout onto the ground. Same with the Kodesh Baruch Hu when it comes to Chesed. It's really the blending of 2 opposing factors to form one perfect entity. The Maharal says, the oneness of the Aleph denotes ultimate perfection, which exists only with Hashem. And then we have the Beis, which is duality, and that implies diversity, sometimes incompatibility. However, the Gimel signifies the ability and the capacity to neutralize these 2 opposing forces, to unite them into a lasting and more wholesome unit, which is really amazing. Now, the Torah starts off with a base because everything in our lives is duality, opposing factors, right? Shemaim v'aretz, ruchnius gashmius, yetzer tov, yetzer ra, man, woman, everything is opposing. But comes the Gimel, And like Shlomo HaMelech says in Kohelet, Hachut HaMishulash lo bimheira yinatek, that the 3-ply cord is not easily severed. Now, we see the balance in the Avos. Abraham was Chesed, Yitzchak was Din. 2 completely opposing factors. Comes Yaakov, he's Emes. What does Emes do? Emes actually blends it, and he creates the balance. All the 3 elements in our lives in Judaism is the element of being the mediator, which dissolves conflict and creates harmony. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, on the 3rd day, what does he do? He separates the water from the dry land, because he's teaching us that separation is not always negative. Differences can be the catalyst for improvement. So 3 represents our ability to resolve initial conflict. Hashem did not create opposing factors, opposites, so that they would conflict, but rather HaKadosh Baruch Hu created opposing factors in order so that we should learn how to blend them, to complement each other, to give us the opportunity to find resolution. And if I were to go through each category that I gave you, we probably would be able to find that element. So that's the number 3. The Maharal says something very interesting before I go on to Torah, Avodah, and Gmilus Chasadim. He says, all you have to do is imagine a link on a chain. The first link touches the second. The second one touches the first and the third. But the third one only touches the second one and not the first. The third, he says, is the first in the series that doesn't have a connection to the first link. It may be something new, but it's not disconnected. That is true harmony. That is true shalom. You know, if you were to take Moshe, Miriam, and Aaron and actually dissect who they were, you would see 2 opposing factors, but there was the mediator, the middleman, which is Aaron, which we actually see in this week's Perek, in Pirkei Avos, that Aaron was the Ohev Shalom, the Rodev Shalom. What's that? Because he was the mediator between the 2 opposing factors, and he was able to be that link to create harmony. So let's go back to the Mishnah. The Mishnah says that the world stands on 3 pillars: Torah, Avodah, Gmilus Chasadim, like a triangle or like a tripod. The Nesiv Shalom said that really it's referring to each and every one of us. Every human being is a little olam katan. We know that from Chazal. Chazal says, Kol hame'abed, anyone who destroys one person with either a word or whatever, it's as if he destroyed a whole world. Anyone who lifts up one person, like we discussed last week, Hamidu Talmidim Harbe, it's as if you have elevated or brought into existence or allowed a whole world to survive, to continue. Each one of us is a little world. So each one of us has to make sure that in our daily activities, the only thing that's going to keep us standing, upright, strong as pillars are 3 things: Torah, Avodah, and Gmilus Chasadim. It doesn't mean that we have to be heavily involved in each one, but there has to be a nakuda every day that we touch on Torah, that we touch on Tefillah, and we touch on Avodah. What is the purpose in our daily life? Torah, to elevate us to a higher plane. Torah study really increases our knowledge, our understanding. It's the relationship between me and myself, in a way. Avodah is tefillah. It's our relationship with Hashem, which we begin to become aware of how dependent I am on him each and every day. And of course, Gmilus Chasadim is the relationship between me and others. So it really encompasses everything. We engage in all levels of our being, our thoughts, our speech, and our actions. What's the highest? The highest is Torah. That's the first one. After that, it branches out. Studying Torah and continuing to learn Torah is primary. The Medrash speaks about the Sar of Esav. And the Medrash asks a very good question. Why did the Sar of Esav not attack Avraham and Yitzchak? Why did he attack Dafka Yaakov? That's a great question. I love that question. I never really saw that question, never even thought of it. So listen to the answer. Avraham personified Chesed. Chesed alone is really harmless. There's nothing distinctive about just kindness. A nation, meaning a nation cannot be built on just Chesed. Same with Yitzchak. Yitzchak personified Tefillah. It didn't bother the Sar of Esav because he realized that Tefillahs have its challenge. Sometimes people have good days, sometimes people have bad days. A world cannot be built on Tefillah. But when he saw Yaakov sitting in the tent, Yoshev Ohalim, and he saw that he was learning, he understood that that is the danger for him. Because Torah is what builds and sustains our people. The minute the pillar of Torah is missing, crumples, destroys, we're in big trouble. And that's probably why, not probably, that is why everybody went so crazy here in New York when the politicians, or really one, was trying to get into our yeshiva system in order to break it down and to create an environment where the children would learn less Torah and more secular. And there was a huge fight. And the Chachamim and the Talmidei Chachamim and Rosh Yeshivas were quite afraid of what may happen. Because if the pillar of Torah falls, then all else crumbles with it. What is it? What is it about Torah? Kabbalah's HaTorah. We accept it each and every day of our lives. In the psukim of Matan Torah, it says, on the third month, by Yom Hazeh, on this day. What on this day? It wasn't on that day. Rashi says that every day we need to look at Torah as if we just got it today. But Rav Shor says something else. He says, Torah redefines the human personality. Whenever you learn Torah, you become new. That's the goal. Not to sit and be inspired, but to shut off the Zoom, to close the Sefer, to walk out of a shiur and to say, how have I changed? How has it redefined my human personality? Where did I become a new creature? The Jew becomes an incarnation of the mitzvahs of the Torah. That's why the Gemara says that 248 limbs of ours is connected, corresponds to the 248 mitzvahs aseh. Because really, the Jewish psyche reflects the Torah. We're defined by it. Each limb is another mitzvah. For a Jew, don't kill in the Aseret Dibros does not mean don't kill. It means you cannot kill. There's no way you can kill because you're violating your own being, your own essence. There's no way you can steal because you're violating your own being. I remember I learned something very great from my grandfather. And after that, I used it a lot while I was bringing up my children. He would look at us when we did something that really wasn't according to his liking, and he would not reprimand. He would say, "It's a pasnisht," meaning, how can that be? That's not you. That's not your identity. That's not your being. All the other nations were asked if they want the Torah. They could not accept the Torah because they would not be able to retain their identity. And that's why there are so many halachas which reflect how we personify Torah, right? We stand up for the Sefer Torah. We also stand up for a Talmid Chacham. We rip our clothes when we see a Sefer Torah destroyed. We rip our clothes, nebuch, in the presence of a departing soul. And that's why we say, La asok b'divrei Torah every morning when we say Birchas Torah, because really those words don't make sense. Baruch atah Hashem, bless you Hashem, that I'm going to be busy with Divrei Torah. What does that mean to be busy with Divrei Torah? So Rav Soloveitchik says that to be busy implies that even when we are mentally involved with something else, we are constantly aware of Torah. This awareness of Torah should become part of one's I awareness. Just as I'm always aware of my existence without having to walk around and saying, oh, I exist, I exist, I exist, so should I be aware of my Torah. And he gives a beautiful mashal. He says, a mother and a child, right? Which is so true. When a mother plays with her child, there's acute awareness of the child. But even when the mother is at her job or she's distracted with something else, there's a natural, latent awareness of her child's existence. Now, this awareness remains throughout the entire lifetime, and it can never be extinguished. How's it expressed? It's expressed in our commitment to that child, to our devotion to that child, and to our feeling of identification, a feeling that I and the child are one. The infant, the child, is the center of the gravity of the parents' lives. They feel they cannot live without the child. The same is true with regards to Torah. There may not be an acute awareness for 24 hours, but the latent awareness should never cease. Never. Meaning we always have to feel it. Rav Soloveitchik says that learning Torah is basically experiencing the presence of Hashem. And he explains that every time you learn something, you're actually re-experiencing Matan Torah. There's no such thing as study of Torah. It's a problem. There is no study of Torah. Torah is a long, eternal process of Matan Torah. When you learn Torah, you meet Hashem. And you meet Hashem, who gave us the law through the fire, through the darkness, and it's as if we are restaging, re-experiencing the Gilui Shechina. Listen to what he says. Studying Torah is a great emotional experience, not only on Shavuos, but each and every day. So that's something to be mindful of, that when I learn Torah, and when I hear Torah, and when I am involved in Torah, I have to ask myself how it's going to make me new, what it's going to do for me. Where in my life will it redefine my personality? Which mitzvah, which limb was affected? How can I remain aware? Let's go to the next one. Avoda. Why is tefillah called avoda? So why? Because it says, right, you say every day in Shema, which comes from the Torah, that you have to love Hashem, b'chol levavecha, right? V'avadetem es Hashem lokecha b'chol levcha. You have to serve God with all your heart. Rashi asks, Ezo hi avodah shebelev? How do you serve God with your heart? Through tefillah. You serve Hashem with your heart through tefillah. What is tefillah? So we all know that philosophers, they speculate about God. Scientists argue about God. Theologians theorize about God. But we Jews, what do? We do something simple, very simple. We talk to God. We bring him into our lives. We thank him. We talk to him about our hopes, our fears, our dreams. We follow the Mesorah of Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, who also spoke to God in very simple ways. Tefillah for our ancestors and for ourselves is really a source of strength. And when we learn to pray, it really becomes ours. So what is tefillah? Tefillah comes from the word lehit palel. It comes from the word pilel, to judge. Hashem is not judging us. We're actually judging ourselves. We're judging ourselves. It really enlightens me about my needs. It makes me very self-aware. It tells the story of my hidden hopes. It's a vehicle for self-awakening, self-awareness, self-definition. The Baal Shem Tov says, listen to this, there are times when the love of Hashem burns so powerfully within one's heart that the words of prayer seem to rush forth. At these times, it's not you who speak. Instead, it's through you that the words are spoken. Tefillah is for us and Hashem. It is the act of listening to Hashem, listening to me. It's the act between me and myself. It comes from the word patil, which is a covering and attachment. It attaches me to Hashem. It attaches me to myself. But you know what else? It attaches me to others as well. How? How does it do that? When I'm sitting alone in my room and I'm davening about my hopes, my dreams, my expectations. Well, all you have to do is look at last week's Parsha. The Mitzorah, when he was Tameh, he had to scream out and he had to say, I'm impure, I'm impure, I'm impure. Why? That's not nice. That's embarrassing. No, because God in his infinite wisdom was trying to say, I want people to hear so that they should have mercy on him. And when they have mercy, they will begin to daven. Tefillah is also, for me, vis-a-vis others. You know, there's a famous story. A person came to the Chafetz Chaim and he started to complain about all his woes. And the Chafetz Chaim interrupted him and he said, excuse me, how's your neighbor, the one that lost the child? Oh, yeah, he's okay. You know, they're moving on. They had another child. Okay. He continues to talk about his personal problems. Excuse me, but I heard that this and this and this happened to that neighbor. And this is the way the conversation's going. The man is talking about himself, and the Chafetz Chaim is talking about the other one. And the man stops short and says, Rebbe, I came here to speak about my woes, my tribulations, my tsar. I need your help. So he looked at him and he said, open up the Chumash. Look at the psukim by Mitzrayim. You will see many different lishonos of the Jews and their tefillos. They were crying for themselves so bitterly. But then when they lifted up their heads and they turned to the other person and they saw how much that person was suffering, those cries turned to screams and they began to cry and scream for the others. We all know that whoever davens for somebody else, for something that you need, your tefillah will be answered. So tefillah is not just for me and Hashem. Tefillah is really for me and everybody else around me. All of it, the Torah, the tefillah, the chesed. When you think about it, it's not just about me and my connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, me and my connection to myself. It's me and my connection to others. I want to just backtrack a second. Torah is referred to as chachma. Take a look at the word chachma. It's the koach of ma. When we learn Torah, we realize, what am I? Mani. Who am I? What's my mission? Where am I going? What am I doing with this? And that makes me also connect to the person next to me. That's tefillah. What about chesed? Gemilos chasadim. So, gemilos chasadim, when you take the word gamal, means really to wean, To wean means when you give the baby the ability to now eat and drink by himself without you. You take the word chesed, Rav Shimshon Raphael Hirsch does this all the time, and you switch the word letters. Chesed, chaser, gamal, gamar. When you do chesed for somebody, your intent is not for you. That's not why you're doing it. You're doing it because you're trying to fill or end, gamar, a chaser in that person. That's what you're doing. However, you need to do it in a way that we're going to connect it to last week's Mishnah, Ha'emidu talmidim harbe, to enable that person to stand up by himself. Meaning what? To give that person a feeling that he can stand within himself the way he looks at himself. Ha'emidu talmidim harbe doesn't actually mean to really stand. It's how he looks at himself. When you take away and you end whatever is chaser to him, you are actually making him look at himself with a bigger self-esteem, that maybe now he could be a giver, because that's what we want. We want to create that others will become givers. When we become givers, we can stand. Where do we see this clearly? By Rachel and Leah. Rachel's chesed was that she put Leah on her 2 feet so that she became the foundation of the Shvatim. When we do chesed, we need to come out of ourselves, because when it's about us, it's not true chesed. You know, if you take a look in the Gemara and in many other halachas, by the way, tzedakah is not under the category of chesed. Bikur cholim is, simchas choshen and kala is, levias hames is, and nichum avelim are. I'll translate. Being menachem avel, how do you say that in English? Going to something, the mourner, to comfort the mourner, visiting the sick, making a choshen and kala happy, and escorting the mace, doing whatever you have to do to the mace. Tzedakah is not under the category. Why? Because all of those require your being, your essence. Because you got to come out of yourself to be able to go to a wedding and to be misameach the choshen and kala. Very difficult, especially when it's late at night, or especially when maybe you're going through something, maybe your children are not married yet, and it's hard to be happy for others. Bikur cholim. Not everybody's comfortable visiting the sick. It makes them really see their own vulnerability. Not easy to come out of myself to do that. Nichum avelim, also a sense of being uncomfortable, doing it right. Sitting in front of the avel and not saying a word, not asking questions, not posing questions, not talking about yourself, not saying, so how long was he sick? Or how old was he? That's not nichum avelim. Nichum avelim is sitting there, just with your being, your presence, in your uncomfortableness, in your silence, in your not knowing what to do. But that's the chesed. And same with Levias Hames. So let's now put it all together. Al shlosha dvarim ha'olam omed. On these 3 pillars, the world is standing. Each one of us is a world. Every single day, we need to be mindful of the Torah that we learn. The Torah that's going to give us the understanding of the koach of mani. What is my mission? Where am I going? What am I doing with this knowledge that I just learned? How am I going to change or become a newer person in some of my character refinement? Tefillah. Who am I going to daven for today? Who am I going to think about today? Who am I going to remember today? Who am I going to call out today? How am I going to connect to myself, self-awareness, self-redemption? What is it about myself that needs also to be refined? What am I asking for? What are my hopes, my dreams, my aspirations, my expectations? How do I thank Hashem? And then Gmilus Chasadim. To find somebody somewhere that I can maybe end something that they lack, and to put them on their own 2 feet, meaning in their own eyes. And maybe now they can become a giver. It could just be a smile, you know. That's all it can take. Just a smile. It could just be a good morning. It could just be, wow, oh, I love your shoes. It could just be something so little. Remember, we learned that. HaKadosh Baruch Hu's bodek b'davar katan. HaKadosh Baruch Hu picked Moshe not because he was big. No, he was a stutterer. He picked him because of his connection to that little lamb that he ran after. Chesed can be in something very, very tiny. So have a wonderful week. Accumulate the ideas. Use them in order to prepare for the most wonderful day of Kabbalah Satorah. And I hope every day you will feel that you are in the presence of a Kadosh Baruch Hu through the through pillars. You will be able to stand tall, and you will be able to do that for others. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you. Thanks, Rachel. That was so beautiful. Really.
Rachel. Thank you.
It
So
was amazing. Beautiful. Wow.
Thank you.
That was a work of art.
Yes, it was.
And a labor of love and